All right, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show, your one-stop shop for all things Commanders. George is on vacation this week, but have no fear, we will make it happen. Today, we are looking at the offensive side of the ball with who else than Anthony Armstrong. Anthony, what's happening, man?
Man, what's going on? How are you doing, Doug?
Good. It has been too long, my friend. Football is back. I know I'm excited. I know you're excited. How long has it been, Anthony, since your last training camp now?
Actually, last year. So and last year was the first training camp. You talking about to visit as a former player? That was
No,
my
that you
first.
participated in.
Oh, okay. Well, shoot, playing 2014. So it's been a while, but
How many years did it take, or do you still get? I talked to plenty of former players that have retired that got the itch, still get the itch. Do you still have it? I mean, is it still this time of year I should be at a camp somewhere, or are you happily retired and don't think about it anymore?
man, I'm past that thought process. Maybe if this was like 3 or 4 years after playing, I'd be like, man, I can still be out there running around. But look, I'm 41 now, and I know there's some times where I'll run around while I'm training my clients and running with them or running with my kids. And then I'm like, ain't no way I want to be out there at somebody training camp right now. Like I'd come in for very limited, play. I get you a couple first downs and a touchdown, but yeah, I don't need to be at nobody's training camp, man. Pick me up mid-season.
How many seasons did it take, do you think, before you really weren't feeling it? Like, this is the time of year I'm supposed to be doing this, this, and the third.
Mm, rephrase the question. Like, what do you mean by that?
So I hear a lot of guys that when they're retired, particularly the next couple of years, like beginning and middle of June, the body just feels like I should be prepping for an
Oh
NFL
yeah,
season. You know what I mean? Like I got that itch to get back with the guys and
yeah,
time to do this. And you've done it so many Julys in a row that it
yeah.
just felt natural. Like how many Julys did it take before you're like, oh yeah, it's not training camp for me this year?
About three. I think it was about three. 3 to 4 is just where you're kind of just like, I'm not going back. I'm not going back. And then sometimes you realize when you like right in there where you're like, I don't need to be doing this any longer. Like it's a young man's game. It's past me. Like you're almost so focused on the regular season, and you're like, I'm gonna be ready to rock over here. That the preseason you just kind of preparing for it. So yeah, whenever that body just like, you know what, I don't need to be sore all the time. Like that's not as cool as it used to be.
Why the number 13?
Man, I actually had no choice. No choice. When I got picked up in Washington, um, shoot, that's what they had in the locker. Threw it on, and I was like 13, and I was like, I didn't know. And I'll go look up numerology and go see what the meaning behind numbers, and I mean, it had a lot of good connotations to it. So I was like, I'm gonna rock with this thing, and it made it what it is. So I'm
You
proud to
wore,
have worn it.
you wore 13 for three different teams.
Yep, Dallas, Washington. Where else? I guess technically Jacksonville for like a week. So I don't even know what that it counts, but it doesn't really count.
And so the only other number you wore in the pros was
I had 11 and I had 80, 86 or 89 for that short time when I was back in Miami. So when I played in Miami, it was like 86 or something like that, 89.
yeah. And you don't do you prefer the 80s to the team numbers for wide receiver?
I
I
like the
know you played
13.
with the team number.
Yeah. No, well, see, when I grew up though, my favorite receiver of all time is Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, okay.
So watching him like, and I wore a single digit. I wore one in high school and in college, and then 17 in Odessa and in Dallas with the Desperados, and then found my way to 13. Um, and I was able to hold on to that, moving forward. But I like the 13 now, but growing up, that 88 was so cold. I mean, Marvin Harrison was just so smooth, and it's like he's gonna line up in the same place the whole time, but he's still catching every pass, and it was just amazing to watch.
Undrafted free agent. Was there a specific reason you think that you went undrafted? And did it end up being better for you? A lot of guys down at the bottom of the draft say they prefer going undrafted, gives them a little more freedom.
Man, shoot, I can't. I'm not gonna say it had any type of freedom that it gave me because the path I went was different. It wasn't one of those like I have a choice of 5 teams. I choose to go here. When I went undrafted, I mean, I was a D2 kid. We had some good stats, but it wasn't like completely dominating everybody. I mean, I had some accolades here or there, but it just wasn't one of those things that really jumped out. Plenty of scouts came by, but when undrafted, ended up getting a call to rookie tryout with the Atlanta Falcons, and dude called me, and he brought me down there, and I was like, all right, cool. And when I got down there, I failed my physical, Doug. So I was in Atlanta for all of like 17 hours, and they send me back to Amarillo. I'm all the way back in college, back where everything was at, and I thought it was all over. Shoot, after the summer, I was grinding. I actually played some flag football with a group of folks from Albuquerque. We went to Vegas. I had a good couple of days, and I was like, I can still play ball, so I'm gonna give this thing a go. And I jump out there, and I called an agent, uh, and he was like, "Yeah, I know a team in Odessa, the Odessa Roughnecks. It's the Intense Football League. It's basically a brand of arena football, smaller brand." And yeah, they're about to start training camp because what happened was I called that same scout after I was healthy. I was suffering an injury. I had an injury from surgery. Called the dude back. He's like, "You need some tape." So I called the folks in Odessa. Went down there for a season. Uh, Went to some tryouts. Ran 4.2 and some 40s. Turned some heads that turned into some Arena One opportunities. A couple years with the Dallas Desperados, and after that '08 season, before it collapsed, the Miami Dolphins called and brought me in for a training camp. And so that's how I got to the league. It was I'd say roundabout way. It was going through the woods. It was making my own path to get there. Did it make me better for it? Hell yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Because I say now, if I would have got into the league like right out of college, I'd have been out in 2 years and wouldn't have learned anything from it.
Mm.
But the path I had went, it made me appreciate going to the PA meetings when they're talking about the financials and they're like, hey, these are the benefits that you have available. Like it made sense when you're like 25, 26 years old looking at it. You know
Right.
what I mean? So the path I went was very unique. It made me who I am, and I'm appreciative for it, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, Doug.
Most people that watch the podcast know that the only thing I love more than the Commanders is my Georgia Bulldogs. We've got a guy, Rosemary Jack Saint, that's going to come in as an undrafted free agent to play wide receiver. We'll get to him later, but I just used him as a reference point because I'm curious when you get there as kind of the last man on the totem pole, what is that like, Anthony?
Man, it's like you backed in a corner and really you can't mess up, right? You have the shortest leash out of everybody. They're almost looking for a reason to get you out of there. And ultimately you get to where you have to just start stacking good days and making good plays day after day. He's probably, you're talking about Jack Saint. He's not going to take Terry's spot, as he's not going to be the number 2 right away. No disrespect, but like coming in, they don't have that slated that way. So he's going to have to make an impact elsewhere. He's going to have to show up on the backside of a run play, right? Coaches throw you in those spots for a reason. If you being lazy on the backside, they're going to write you off. You're an undrafted kid. They don't owe you anything. They'll get somebody else that's sprinting across the field, right? So doing those things and building trust in those coaches is how you're going to make your impact as an undrafted guy. It's not just going to be because he's a hell of a receiver. You being a great receiver got you here. Now you have to be a better football player to get on the field to earn those receiver reps.
All right, let's get into this roster a little bit. We'll start at the top. The quarterback is the most important position on the field as it stands now. We know Daniels will make the team. We know Mariota will make the team. Let's assume here that we're picking 53 total. It's a defensive-minded head coach. Generally, the extra spot goes to them, right? So we'll assume that it's 25, 26 players on offense.
Okay.
27 maybe.
There's one thing I thought about, and I've been saying with the new kickoff rules.
Yep.
That leads me to believe that you have to pick a different type of player to fill in um, those lower roster spots, right? Instead of
Okay.
having 7 receivers, now you have to have an extra linebacker because of the kickoff. You have to be able to get off of a block in short range. Receivers ain't necessarily trying to do that. It's different when we have a head start and we can sprint and weave around people, but when we're only 5 to 7 yards away and there's not that many alleys, you're gonna have to button press. It's a technique they use, a button press, and then you're gonna have to be able to two gap somebody. Receiver mess around, you might get thrown out the way. I used to run down there and just cause havoc and let Lorenzo come through like a sledgehammer and knock everybody out. So that was the kind of agreement that we had. He's like, you flush it out and I'll come clean it up. So it could affect that. So essentially it could be like a 25 and you could see a couple extra defensive players based
Right.
on that, whatever Larry Izzo wants to do.
It will be fascinating to see how the new rules affect the way teams come at special teams. So let's just consider 25
All right.
on offense. So we know we got Daniels down. Mariota stays. What do they do with Hartman?
I think if he shows some promise, I think they may find a way to keep him. I know there's some new. Did they do the new designation for the ability to like stash a third quarterback?
Yeah, but I'm not sure if you get them on the rule, they've got so many damn rules now, Anthony. It's hard to keep track of them all. If they get him on the practice squad, he still can. The only way to get him off the practice squad would then be if another team put him on their active roster. Is that how that works?
Yeah, that is how that goes. But I knew they. I think there was something where they could keep a third quarterback and maybe it didn't count against their practice squad or something like that. So let's just assume he's either on the roster or not on the roster. Practice squad doesn't matter. I mean Hartman, if he has a decent preseason, I mean with the work he gets, I think there's a reason enough to consider keeping him. Maybe he's an easy piece to cut off. If you need to, and pick him back up because he did get picked up he got drafted by Birmingham, the Stallions in the USFL. So he has another place to go. And who knows, maybe they'll let him go up and down as needed.
So for the 25, we'll keep 2 quarterbacks.
Sounds good.
Okay. Then we will shift to running back. Feels like 3 running backs.
Easily. I mean, you got Robinson, Ekeler, and Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm down here looking at the running backs now. I mean, really, the only other person that you're looking at is Jeremy McNichols, maybe.
Yeah. And that may be, and once again, you got to look at special teams when you start getting deep. How many places do they want to have him? If that guy's a havoc, raises hell on special teams, you could see them keeping 4, but 3 for sure. I think these are your top 3.
Yeah, I can't see names like Michael Wiley and Austin Jones or Jeremy McNichols making the team.
Yeah, so I'm fine with 3 there.
Okay. Now we'll shift to, let's see, we'll go look at the tight end. This tight end room is interesting. More interesting than I realized when I looked at it today. So you got John Bates, who has always been a favorite of mine. I think he's a little underrated for what it's worth. I know Kuiper said he had the best hands in that draft other than Pitts that year.
Yeah.
Probably our best inline blocker. At any rate,
that's his key, what he brings, that blocking ability.
That's right. Because when we start looking at the rest of the tight end room, I don't think we're going to see that same kind of blocking work. Zach Ertz obviously makes the team. Armani Rogers, I think, was an interesting name a year ago. Not sure what this staff will think about him. Of course, this staff just drafted Ben Sinnott.
Yeah.
And Cole Turner was at least a fan favorite in camp 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Hadn't put much together. But again, a mid-round draft pick that I think has some potential. Big size guy, big catch radius guy. What do you make of the tight end room?
I honestly think that you can keep all of them. And the reason is whenever we get to the receiver room, after your top two, it's kind of like, or top three, you're like, oh, who do you keep? Like, it could be any mix of people. They may not have to keep 6, 7 receivers, right? So you need to have a John Bates when you need to get physical, and the times you are blocking in line. Zach Ertz, obviously, like you said, and then Senate, I think, is going to be very useful because he may end up being in the play in the program as a tight end, but he's going to be a utility player. Like you'll see him lined up probably in the backfield as a fullback, as a
Mhm.
wing, moving him around, kind of like Chris Cooley, those
Yeah.
type of days. Getting him in useful places to allow him to thrive. So he's going to be a flex player. So it's almost like you have four. Like you could say you have four tight ends plus you've got a fullback utility guy in Ben Sinnott. So I think Cole Turner and Amari Rogers. I think they physically 6'5", 6'6". There's almost like no reason to get rid of them. Like go give them a chance. Like if they bring something to the offense, there's better opportunity to just keep them on the team rather than just cutting ties and going and get somebody else. So I think you keep all these guys.
And do we assume then that Zach Ertz is the day one starter? I mean, how much do we think he has left in the tank?
I mean, I think he'd be day one starter, and until maybe somebody has thrives a little bit more, somebody may show up to kind of take his snaps. But I think as you start the season, it's going to feel good to see Zach Ertz run out there. It doesn't mean that you're not going to see a 2 tight end set to start the year, right? You
I hope
don't,
I hope they do a bunch of that, quite frankly.
right? I mean, you think about some of the best 2 tight end sets. The one I always think about is just what New England was able to do with
Mhm.
With Gronkowski
And
and
Hurns.
with Hernandez. Right now, is Senate going to have that type of utilization where he's in the backfield running wheels and doing all these other things? And I mean, hell, Gronk's one of the best to ever do it. So is anybody else gonna? Who's gonna be the other guy? But
And Hernandez was going to be better than Gronk.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I
take
mean,
all the other stuff off just on the
yeah,
football field.
hell of a duo. So I mean, I think creativity enough. I think that you have a lot to work with when you keep all these guys, different body types.
The offense, I think, is interesting. We talk about this on the podcast all the time, Anthony. It's one to me, is one of the biggest storylines of the entire offseason. We get Kingsbury in, you get Anthony Lynn in, you get Brian Johnson in, and it feels like whoever put the staff together, whether Kingsbury picks the next two guys or I'm not sure exactly who picked them, but those guys feel to me like they do what Kingsbury not great at marrying the play action game. Been long one of the knocks on him. I
Yeah.
mean, you bring in Anthony Lynn, who is exceptional at it. I'm curious. This was a long-winded way to get to. I think what the offense actually will look like is going to be fascinating.
Oh, I think it's going to be just a grouping of so many different, what's the word, amalgamation, right? They're
Yes,
going to have everything combined because you mentioned Anthony Lynn leaning on him, and what you look at, but what he was doing out there in San Diego. But I think Brian Johnson is a big hire as well because he's bringing that shotgun run aspect of things, right? So what Philly was doing, mix that in there, and I think everybody, and I look at this whole entire staff. Everybody kind of is coming from a place where they're like coming from humility, right? They're like, hey,
redemption tour.
yeah. And they're like, I'm willing to listen to what this other guy has to say. And like, we're all working at the same thing. Like, there's so much head coaching experience and then like top line coaching experience is on this staff that they're gonna show that same coaching staff fast forward in about 5 years because half of them are going to be gone as head coaches somewhere else. But hopefully it comes with success in Washington this time around. So I think that could happen. It's a special group of people, and I'm interested to see how it all works together.
I am too, and it feels nice. One of the knocks on defensive head coaches, it feels like, is that if the offense coordinator is really good, you're going to start losing them. And offense is the way the league is kind of leaned on right now. But it feels like with Cliff, maybe his time away, some of these guys are just not cut out to be head coaches, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he has had enough time to say, you know what? I just want to draw plays on the whiteboard and have some fun and get freaky on offense. And so maybe you don't have to worry about losing him in a year or two. Brian Johnson may want another shot, but it feels like he's got a couple years left to rebuild that image. Because last year, of course, didn't go great. You go back to the year before, Brian Johnson did a great job when he
Oh
was a
yeah.
quarterback coach, right? So it feels like maybe Anthony Lynn is the only one that would be interested in trying to get another head coaching job anytime soon. I think that bodes well for the gelling of this offense, right?
Oh, I'm with you on that. I think that's probably spot on, honestly. Because, like you said, everybody has the ability to go be a head coach. And you're looking on that defensive side, Joe Witt can easily be gone as a head coach as well. But I think there's going to be success here. And I think you're talking redemption tour goes all the way up to the head coach. Like, I know that right now, Dan Quinn's probably going to be able to listen to, Anthony Lynn's experience as a head coach and Cliff Kingsbury's experience as a head coach. And he gets to just lead this team in a motivational way and probably lean a bit more focused on the defensive side, so it's going to be exciting to see how it all works together. I love how Joe Witt said that one of their advantages that nobody knows what it's going to look like offensively or defensively. And I love that. I love that.
And for those that say, here we go again with a retread, Ron said he had taken time to self scout. Ron didn't actually take any time off, right? He got fired from the Panthers and then came right here. So how you could have, but it feels like Quinn's had enough time to actually do some self reflection since he was a head coach. Some also because he spent years as the defensive coordinator. I think people forget that last year in Atlanta, after Shanny had moved on, Sarkisian was still working through his problems, let's call it. And if he had already gotten through there, who knows what might have happened? Because I guess what I'm saying, Dan doesn't have a problem letting the offense be the offense. And it felt like last year, Ron's still one of these guys that certainly doesn't mind, but maybe even prefers winning 18-13.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
Quinn doesn't strike me that way. I think Quinn's excited. He's been with Shanny. I mean, they want to put 40 up.
Yeah.
Anthony, I want to put 40 up.
Yeah, but you talk about the Shanahan relationship. Kyle was young at that time too, right?
Yes.
And that was a very young offensive staff to kind of let go do your thing. So I would assume that Dan would have been more in line with what's going on that side of things. But this is a staff where it's like, y'all got it, right? Like, this is what I want us to do. We all got it handled. You got two former head coaches and a head coaching candidate right there. Like, yeah. They got it handled. I think they'll be okay. So, this is the way this thing is crafted and structured. It's very strategic.
We kind of blew right through the running backs because I think it was kind of easy to know the three to be on there. I'm curious what you think that duo will look like. We've kind of been doing fantasy football all off season, and we know we've heard a lot about what the fantasy football folks think it might look like. What do you think it looks like? I mean, Ekeler's already said he doesn't want as many carries. You think he'll strictly be like a third down, mix them in and out back? Because one of the things we saw from Brian Robinson last year is much better catcher of the football than I think people realize. Too early to know what the split looks like, but what do you think they want it to look like?
I do think you lean heavy on Robinson, but be able to go to Ekeler, like you said, on those third downs, maybe some key second downs, probably have them on the field at the same time from time to time. One of the things that I think is probably not as talked about enough is how Ekeler is going to help any quarterback that's in on third downs, whatever quarterback it ends up being, right? Obviously we're assuming it's going to be Jayden, but you got to think his veteran experience is going to be able to help this guy. Hey, no, let's not go there. This guy's blitzing over here. Getting the protections right is going to help, help this offense progress. And I think that's where he's going to have an impact. The red zone, like, put him in those key situations. Like, there's no need to run him on 1st and 10, like, and let him get hit an additional time to get 2 yards, right? Or 4 yards, right? I'd rather you put him in there when Robinson has been beating them down, and then you need a spell, and then you got a quicker guy who can run something else. So, little thunder, lightning backfield, a little bit more on the thunder, though.
Were you a Jayden Daniels guy? Did you have a preference between him and May? It felt like everybody was split between the two.
I did not want to go back to North Carolina, to be real. Like it called me superstitious. It just at some point you look like, for now your pipeline is a little bit skewed, right? I mean, if you go back to the previous draft pick, I mean Trubisky came out and you have your opinions on that career, then you just got done having a quarterback that was there from North Carolina. And I like Sam Howell. I think he's a hell of a quarterback, but then you just went there. So now you're going to go back down there again. And you got spurned by the coach from Detroit that went to North Carolina. I don't want nothing to do with North Carolina. You know what I mean? But when you think about a player that people would say is more of a project, and May has all the measurables, and they're like, man, but you can get him to be his ceiling is maybe higher. Give me the Jayden Daniels, the guy who's had recent success and has the Heisman, and like I'd rather have that success and bring that type of energy to the building rather than having to hopefully mold this guy into the right player.
Limited partner Mark Ein was on with Sheehan the other day. I don't know if you saw that or not, and said that Quinn was the pick that Peters wanted all along. I think we can have a debate about whether that's true. They sent the private jet on its way out to Detroit. They flew they flew Quinn on Delta, so maybe not. But I thought it was interesting that they said that whether Quinn was the guy or not, sometimes you stumble forward, right? And I think maybe they did that with Quinn. You can see by the staff he's put together, some of the players that have come that I don't think were coming regardless. I mean, Bobby Wagner's on the team. I mean,
Facts.
what world is it that we're living in here? So yeah, I think we got lucky, if you will, if Dan Quinn hadn't actually been the first choice.
Yeah, I think that if it wasn't Dan Quinn, I don't know if you assembled this whole coaching staff.
Ken Norton's in DC. Come
You
on.
get what I'm saying? I mean, nothing against the OC in Detroit, but I just feel like Dan Quinn brings more to the table. I mean, everybody's like, oh, but 28-3. I'm like, yeah, but I'd rather have somebody who's been there and can say, I did this wrong.
Right.
This is what I would do to fix it. You know what I mean? I'd rather take that. So you falling forward. I'm gonna lean on the side that it was his first pick. They were just trying to see how Buddy was gonna act. We wasted a whole lot of gas for it, huh?
Yeah, and that gas ain't cheap.
Right.
All right, let's see. Let's get to the wide receiver room because I think this one is interesting. Let's see. Obviously, Terry makes it.
Yeah.
Jahan makes it.
Yeah.
Luke McCaffrey makes it.
Yeah.
Jamison Crowder makes it.
Okay.
And they actually signed Zacchaeus. So I would think he's in first to be next, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got guys like Bryson Tremaine, Mitchell Tinsley, Rosemy Jackson, Dax Milne, Devion Davis, Demiri Bird, and I guess the other interesting one is De'Ami Brown, right?
Yeah, I think De'Ami is the one you have to think needs to do something to be here, and probably has the best pathway to make it. Most experience out of all those other names that you had. You mentioned Zacchaeus. He may be in that position where it's like if one of these other guys are looking pretty good, that they maybe easily say, hey, we'll just go ahead and cut ties with the veteran and then run with one of these younger guys that has a little bit more quote unquote upside. So that's something that they may play. But yeah, if you take the trade off the table, like no trades happening, we're not just focusing on people that are already here. Yeah, Terry, Jahan, McCaffrey. I'll give it to De'Ami. I feel like Jack Saint, if they can keep Jack Saint on the practice squad, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to do that and kind of hide him over there. But hey, if he's starting to make some plays, man, do what's best for the team.
That's right. How many receivers do you think they'll keep for this exercise?
Max 6.
Okay, and so then it's one of Zacchaeus, Jack Saint, and I guess the other one that has a chance is Casimir Allen. If Brown makes it, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for sure.
Yeah, I did Terry, Dotson, McCaffrey, Crowder, Zacchaeus, and Brown. So I just took those,
And
and
that's
then
that's 6 then.
1, 2, 3, yep, 4, 5, 6, yep,
Okay. I think because I think they signed Zacchaeus this offseason.
yeah,
So it would feel like he's first in line since he's one of their signings. All right, if we go with 6 receivers, what's the tally now? 2 quarterbacks,
yep.
3
That
running backs.
is 16.
Okay. Offensive line is the story of the offseason, other than the coaching staff, of course,
Yeah,
and the draft picks. What will they do at tackle, Anthony? And is it a big problem? It's interesting before you answer that. I was watching an interview with Scott Forrester, who is back with the 49ers and the Shanahans, who is the offensive line coach with them pretty
hmm
much everywhere they've gone. And he said, we can work with average offensive linemen just above the little average line. We'd rather put our resources into playmakers because we can scheme up ways to help them if if we know we've got a problem at edge, we can figure that out. We can slide protections. So I understand that concept, but the tackles here look like maybe they're below the line.
hey, you can still scheme some of that stuff up. I looked at some stats of just of Arizona stats when Cliff was there. They only gave up about 40 sacks. 28, I think 28 was like the lowest. Around 45 was kind of the high. You're coming from 65. So just off the fact that you get the ball out quicker, I'm assuming that that's what's going to happen with Cliff Kingsbury's offense. Leads me to believe that you'll see that sack number come down. You talk about the ways to help out, having Austin Ekeler in the backfield. Like sometimes it's like, man, big fella, I just need you to not get beat off the edge, right?
Mhm.
Just don't let him in. Just get in his way a little bit. We can figure the rest of it out. I think that will help. And then you saw that drill with Coleman, who was kick sliding from left to right. I saw that tape and I was like, this dude can move. This dude
Yeah,
can move. And having that type of feet work and footwork and being nimble like that at that size, like all of his tape is short set stuff. Because when he gets his paws on you, you're done. But now seeing him being able to kick slide 2 or 3 yards to the side, it lets me know he's going to be able to pass off a TE and catch some stunts and actually lock some people down. So I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with Brandon Coleman. I think that's what's
I
going to
watched him
happen.
in that Georgia game, and he didn't give up a pressure, so he gets credit by me.
Yeah.
You think he's enough to be the day one starter? Because it feels like it at this point, and obviously this is a little early. Camp hadn't started. It's
Yeah.
we're prognosticating before you should prognosticate. I get all that, but like, do you think do you think they will reach out to Leno?
I do. I think you need to reach out to some veteran, but they need to understand the role that they're coming into, right? Because I think that you got to give Coleman, you're going to have to almost baptize him by fire. You're going to have to put him out there because this division is not a slouch, right? I mean, every single week in division foe, you're playing against somebody who can get after the quarterback, Parsons and Thibodeau, and then they just got Brian Burns up there in New York. So you got a lot, and then obviously the Philly has Georgia, up north. So you don't have an easy week. You don't have an easy week. So you need somebody that's going to be able to be nimble and stay up with these guys. But you need to have a backstop just in case it gets ugly, right? Just in
Yeah,
case it
because
gets
it's
ugly.
Cornelius Lucas or Trent Scott after him.
Yeah, and I mean you've heard good things about Lucas. They must feel good about him that they had brought him back in. And I mean, hey, you bring in Bobby Johnson, and hopefully he can bring some good coaching and get these guys ready and ready to get in there. But I think the other veterans along the line, Beatis is a big addition in the middle. Him being able to communicate, talk with Cosme. I think Cosme's taking himself to the next level. I love that clip of him saying Bobby Wagner gave him a tell.
Mhm.
Like, can you imagine how many more conversations are being had now
Yeah.
about, hey, this, that, and the other? Let's communicate this. So it's not like you have Coleman or Lucas up next against lined up with a whole bunch of rookies. You may have the toughest job, but we're going to put you in the best position to be successful. You know what I mean? So I'll take the athleticism. I've seen a lot of Trent Williams clips come along lately. What number is Coleman wearing?
Is it 71?
Is it?
No,
I don't.
I don't. Let me see. Actually, it's right here.
Let's see. 74. Close enough.
74.
Close enough. Close enough. Hell, I saw pictures of Trent Williams wearing 72. I was like, ugh.
So it didn't look right, did it?
No, different universe or something.
I do think that Beatis edition is huge. We could see it last year. There was not they relied on the center to make a lot of those calls, and it went terribly wrong. I'm not sure whose responsibility will be what this year, but with a rookie quarterback, to your point out, you would assume that they're going to lean on the center to make a lot of those adjustments and calls. And again, I think he's an above average center, most certainly, and probably I would think an upgrade over Gates certainly. The backup center, um, the kid from Arkansas, does he make you nervous at all?
Man, I think anybody after the start is going to make you a little nervous. But I mean, Stromberg he's only in the second year. Um, I would like to think he could still make some plays for you, but just haven't seen a whole bunch of them. He's still in the building, which is a good thing, and he could probably benefit from being behind the veteran as well, right? So um, when you're trying to protect your major asset, and I get it, I said over there, you got a rookie at left tackle, but everybody else can support him. You got a veteran at center. You don't necessarily want to throw that rookie out there, but learn by being around these people because they may need him down the line with this late bye week. They go with week 14 bye week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting because generally the backup center's got to be able to play both guard positions as well. I know he did some of that at Arkansas. It'll be interesting to see if any of these guard backups they have can play center, and whether that will affect his ability to be able to keep his spot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are you surprised they haven't given Cosme a new contract yet? I mean, you can't let him get out of the building, right? It feels like he's one of the better guards in the league at this point, and
Yeah,
still
don't
ascending.
don't let him leave. I mean, you've been down that road before, but it's starting to turn the tide of being able to actually keep people in the building. Maybe Cosby is just taking his time right now. Maybe he wants to see if this is a real thing. But um, I can see why he would want to take his time. I mean, obviously the history and winning on the field hadn't been there, so now it feels different in the building. You're getting tips from a legendary player, Hall of Famer, and Bobby Wagner across the way. Maybe you decide after a couple of wins that I do want to go ahead and stay here. Let's open the floodgates and make this conversation happen.
It's a great point you make. I think from the fan perspective, we just look at it like, why haven't we signed Cosme yet? What's going on here?
Yeah,
Of course, it takes two people to get a deal done. To your point, maybe Cosme said, pump the brakes. Let's see what's going on here. Let's evaluate, and then we can do it again. Great perspective because the fans just always figure, hey, it can get done if you want it to get done.
yeah. It's not like Madden, like you just go in there like let me do the contracts real quick, boom, 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 boom. Like no, some people got to wait till week 8, until you can unlock them to talk to them about contracts, and maybe Cosme's going that way.
That's right. They brought in Nick Allegretti in the offseason. Do you think he starts or will they continue with Chris Paul?
Man, I think that's just going to be a story to be told. Honestly, that those guys are going to be interchangeable, and I think those joint practices are going to be something that's key. It's one thing to be able to go up against the same guy every single day, and then if you're better than they are, then you're just better than they are, and it shows up on tape. But when you're going up against a different opponent, especially in a scripted period like a joint practice, you get to script some things in there, to see how somebody responds. And coaches will say, "Hey, give me a certain look. I'm looking for a certain look in these things," and you're going to see, you'll see some players probably make some jumps at that point. So that is a story to be told. But I would think you would pencil Allegretti in as a starter coming out of the gate, just leaning on that, Super Bowl, been in the Super Bowl. So you got to listen to what he has to say. And if he can communicate this stuff down to Coleman or Lucas on the left side, it could be the best way to get things done, I think.
People were not happy with the production of Andrew Wiley last year. We watched the tape every Tuesday on the channel last year, and while it wasn't great, there was a lot of that wasn't really on Andrew Wiley. There was a lot of bad things that happened on that offense last year. Are you fine with him returning? I mean, it's either Cornelius Lucas again or Trent Scott or somebody that gets cut later in the offseason.
Now, I'd go back to saying Chris Forrester's line of you can scheme ways
Yes.
to help protect some sides on some edges, and I think it's beneficial to the fact of not having to go three wide receiver sets all the time. That you do get that additional tight end fullback back in the backfield that can chip on the way out and still run a route. It adds a little bit of flexibility and it makes those defensive ends think twice before they just pin their ears back. If there's nobody back there to your side, Myles Garrett and crew, they are getting very excited because they know it's just one person that they have to get around. But whenever there's a back there that'll put a shoulder in their ribs, they got to think twice a little bit before they go around there. They start forcing certain moves, and I'd like to think that the offensive line is talking with the backs and saying, "Hey, this is I'm going to help you out. Help me by chipping him back inside, and then we can negate this pass rush." So do I want him to play better? Absolutely. But I think it's going to be a team effort, unless he's been working like crazy in the offseason and comes back, like a mini Trent Williams or something like that. Shout out to him. We're going to need some help from the backfield.
We've got how many? We're at the we're last here with the O line. How many do we have on paper now so
I
far?
think that's it. I think that's everything. So 2 quarterbacks. That's fine. That's 16 there. 17, 18, 19, 20. Maybe I'm one short. Maybe we got one. Maybe I'm at like 24.
Who are the linemen that we have on the paper as of right now?
Coleman, Lucas, Biadish, Cosme, Wiley, Stromberg, Paul, and Allegretti.
And so then there's one more. But I bet you, looking at this list, is Trent Scott on the list?
He's not on the list.
He may be the one guy that gets on the list if they take 25 offensive linemen.
All right, I'll add Trent Scott then. We'll put him on the bottom. Boom.
How exciting does the offense make you?
I think the most of your excitement is obviously at the quarterback position. And then the unknown factor, right? Of just not knowing what this is going to look like. That keeps you hyped up. A lot of lesser known players, nobody just jumps out like that's a superstar. Just at any position. Obviously, it's all about the quarterback. I'm excited to see what they unveil because there's a lot of talent, though. There's a lot of talent, and knowing what type of creativity there could be. Just the anticipation is what gets you most riled up, and that's what I feel about it. It's one of those ones where it's a quiet patience, right? You just kind of it's bubbling, it's simmering, and you're like, this could be really good, but let's see it on paper first. Let's see it on the field, I should say.
What is the number like? An offense. If they're 15th in the league in offense, that's a good year for them. Like what are you hoping to see? What does the offense need to do?
Man, I would love to see this offense adjust, really kind of take what the defense gives them, but like force the defense into certain positions, right? I think a lot of times you could tell that the offenses were just doing whatever the defense gave them. They would audible something else, and then the defense could dictate to the offense. This league is getting to that point, and the best teams in this league, the offenses dictate to the defense. Either if it's going to be by tempo or if it's going to be by scheme. But I want them to go out there and say, we're going to take this, first down. We're going to take this throw. This is what we're going to do. If you give us something, we have an adjustment and an answer for it. And when you hear about Jayden preparing the way he does and gets to the building so early, like you got to think he's thinking next level on these things too. So I want to see some excitement. I want to see him come out with some firepower, converting third downs. Big plays here or there. Like just a solid team that puts points on the board.
I believe they haven't averaged 20 points a game in like a decade.
I mean, I could see that. I could see that. It's been a while. It's been a while. It's time to change.
Real quick before we get out of here, were you ever a part of one of those joint practices?
Man,
joint training camp. I was trying to think if you were there the year that they did.
I didn't do any. I
Yeah.
didn't do it. I did do one in when I was with Dallas, when it was out there in Oxnard. I want to say we did with like the Raiders or something like that. And it just they always get chippy. And this was also when I was like a 33-year-old player. So I'm coming in there with a whole different mindset. Look, I'm getting ready for the season. You getting ready for the season. Like, don't do anything extra. Like, but there's always that one guy that's like he's trying to make the roster, and God bless him, dude's like a torpedo, man. He's just flying around, going as fast as possible because he's trying to make an impression. But he's gonna hurt somebody. He just runs into somebody. Somebody gets hurt. Fights ensue. I'm like, I'm good. I was good at 33. I was like, I'm not interested, Doug.
Tell us about the Bleav Commanders podcast. What days y'all got this year?
Man, shoot, the ideal schedule for the Bleav Commanders, especially when we get into the season, is at least leading up to the game and then giving something after the game, breaking down what we saw. I'd love to look at some tape. And I'll probably do some videos on that. But on all your favorite streaming platforms, still got the YouTube. It's at Bleav Commanders on Twitter and X, and I'm at Rated Armstrong on those platforms too.
Make sure you check it out. Does a great job. Anthony, appreciate you, man.
Thank you for having me, Doug. Y'all be good.
Yep.